My career as an automotive improvement expert began when I modified my first car. Since then, as a car enthusiast and published author, my obsession with the automobile has led me to enhance tons of vehicles, both inside and out. That's why I'm thrilled to be a part of a brand new series designed to help keep your car looking great and your engine running like new. I'm Chris Duke, and welcome to eHow's Auto Center, brought to you by Mobil 1. Today we're going to look at superchargers and turbochargers, show you the difference between the two and the pros and cons of each. For anyone looking to add horsepower in a hurry, supercharging or turbocharging is a great way to go. Both used forced induction to increase airflow through the throttle body, which in turn significantly increases horsepower. Boost, which is normally measured in pounds per square inch or bar, is the amount of air pressure that an engine will see over a naturally aspirated setup. The difference between the two chargers lies in the fact that turbochargers make boost through a spinning of a turbine wheel that is pushed by exhaust gases, while supercharger compressors are driven by a belt connected to the various pulleys on an engine's face. Now, because they are driven by different methods, turbos and superchargers make boost and power in different ways, giving different driving experiences depending on what you choose to install. Deciding on which to pick for your vehicle may seem a little daunting, so let's take a look at each one, learn some facts, and see how they work. Superchargers are mechanically driven, usually using a belt or a gear, and act like air compressors to force air into the engine to get you the power that you need. Turbochargers work by using the exhaust gases to create their forced induction for power. Exhaust flow from the engine spins a turbine, which in turn spins an air pump. This lets the engine squeeze more air into a cylinder. Driven by a belt, chain, or gears directly from the engine's drive shaft, a supercharger represents a greater parasitic load on the engine than a turbocharger does. The increased output more than makes up for the drag, but in the overall equation, superchargers are less efficient. However, the direct connection means the supercharger's output advantage is there even at low engine revolutions. The biggest advantage with a supercharger system is that the power is instantly there for you. Since supercharger systems are mechanically driven by the engine, they don't need to spool up before providing power. Their power band is instantaneous and increases smoothly while under throttle. The biggest disadvantage with superchargers is that it uses some of the horsepower from the engine to run, so even though the amount of power is small, it is still robbing horsepower. Turbochargers are bolted to the exhaust manifold of the engine. Exhaust from the cylinders pass through the turbine blades, causing the turbine to spin. The more exhaust flowing through the blades, the faster they spin. Now at the other end of the shaft is the compressor, which pumps air into the cylinder. The compressor is a type of centrifugal pump that draws air in at the center of its blades and flings it outward as it spins. The turbine shaft has to be able to handle speeds of up to 150,000 RPM, so turbochargers use a fluid bearing. This type of bearing supports the shaft on a thin layer of oil that is constantly pumped around the shaft, which cools the turbocharger and allows it to spin without much friction. The main advantage of a turbocharger is the fact that it does not use the engine's power to create horsepower, since it runs off the engine's exhaust gases. But with air being pumped into the cylinders under the pressure of the turbocharger and then being compressed further by the piston, there is an increased danger of knock. In order to avoid knock, your car will need a higher octane fuel. If the boost pressure is really high, then you may need to reduce the compression ratio of the engine. Generally speaking, a turbo's presence is felt only at higher RPM. Once the engine revs up, the exhaust gases flow and the turbine spools up. Conversely, superchargers are less effective at high engine RPMs because they can't keep up with the demands of a high-revving engine. A supercharger geared to increase its output to meet the demand would add so much complexity and friction as to make it unfeasible. Turbos are able to keep up with the demand basically because they are driven by and driving the same medium, gas, in the form of exhaust gases and intake air. An increase in exhaust flow with RPM nets a nearly equal increase in charging pressure on the intake side. Both systems deliver a significant amount of horsepower to your ride. Whereas adding a catback exhaust system or a cold air intake can give you 10 to 25 horsepower, a supercharger or turbocharger system can deliver over 100 horsepower from a simple kit install. Now, on the other hand, both systems can be pretty pricey and usually take some technical savvy to install and tune. Now, it isn't very likely that you can do a complete supercharger or turbocharger kit install and tune your vehicle without help or even turning to a hot rod shop to get some, if not all, of the work done. One other factor you will want to keep in mind is that a supercharger or turbocharger will generate a lot of heat. You may need to install additional cooling components other than what's provided with the kit, depending on the type of vehicle and the kit you use. The most common cooling component is an intercooler. Now, I've given you the basics and shown you two very effective ways to add some serious power to your ride. The question you're now going to ask yourself is, which one is right for me? Well, unfortunately, there's no simple answer. You'll have to take a look to see which kits are available for your specific vehicle, then weigh in the cost, the difficulty of the installation, and the horsepower gain. Now, those are usually the three top deciding factors, and once you figure those out, you should be able to make a confident decision. Another important consideration you'll need to make is whether or not to upgrade your drivetrain. As a result of adding additional horsepower and torque, your transmission and rear end will be under more stress than the factory specifications. So before you start peeling up the pavement with all that new power, also consider beefing up your drivetrain. Otherwise you might break something, and those parts aren't cheap. I hope we've given you a better understanding of what a supercharger and turbocharger can do, and the information you need to make the right decision. Regardless of your choice, you will love the new power your ride will have. For eHow's Auto Center, I'm Chris Duke. Here's to helping keep your car running like new.